Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Dancing Oracle with Najia. We have a really special show today. Wonderful guest from the UK. And he is going to be talking about a few things concerning energy. It's all about energy. In this series, he has been practicing Feng Shui since the 1990s. He is going to talk about this angry Celt spirit on his bordering his property and about ley lines and dowsing. So let's welcome the lovely John to the show. Welcome. Hi, John.
Hello, Najia. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Yes. Thank you for thank you for giving your time to come here today and
Very happy to do so.
enlighten yes, and enlighten our viewing audience because we had such a wonderful conversation for hours. He has fascinating stories. And I said, "Oh, you just can you share? Can you share with my audience because we should know about this." Okay, can you just tell us a little bit about your background first?
Yes, Najia.
Talk about yeah, go
I
ahead.
spent I spent a lot of time traveling in my career, but I became involved with Feng Shui back in the 1990s, and it became increasingly important because I saw how well it worked, how useful it was in everyday life, and it's based on a very simple fact that matter is the manifestation of energy. And what we see has been created by energy. And if we learn to read one, we can also read the other. We all practice it, Najia. This is what people don't understand. When we look at each other's faces, we're practicing feng shui because we're looking at the energy emanating from that face. It may be positive, it may be negative, depends from our point of view. And when we look at houses, when we look at woodlands, when we look at towns and cities, we see the results of feng shui, the results of energy manifesting itself as matter. So if we can control one, we can also control the other. And I would divide it. I'm giving you a very brief summary here, but this is the essence of how it
Yeah.
works. I divide it between positive and negative energy. Positive energy is the energy which enhances our well-being in whatever manner. Negative energy is any energy which harms that well-being or diminishes it. So the whole essence of feng shui, if you ever have a feng shui consultant to your home, is simply to reduce or remove negative energy in the home and to enhance and to encourage positive energy. And there are many different ways of doing that. And when we go around homes as feng shui consultants, we see immediately certain aspects of energy which you notice when you're looking for them. You might not notice when you don't. Um, just to give you one example out of many, I had a case in Zurich, in Switzerland, many years ago, when a lady phoned me and said, I'd like you to come round and look at my house and we'll see if there's any improvement that we can make. She wasn't getting on too well with her husband. This is often what happens, actually. The wife or the girlfriend will contact me and say, can we improve our relationships?
Yeah.
The boyfriend or the husband only becomes involved later on. They're seldom interested to begin with, but they become interested. Anyway, this couple have been married for some time. They had a 14-year-old boy. And when I came into the property where they lived, there was a garden. And in the relationship area of the garden, was a child's swing. When I say a child's swing, I mean the sort of swing which you would expect to put a 2-year-old in, a little seat with a bar so he can't fall out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, you did say you had a teenage son, is that right? She said, yes. I said, well, that swing looks like a swing for a toddler. She said, yes, it used to be his. And I said,
Yeah.
do you have any reason why it's still there since he hasn't used it for the last 10 years or so? She said, this was very revealing. What else would I put in that area? This was the relationship area. And straight away, when you're looking for clues, that gives you clues. And then you start
So,
to dig deeper.
Mark,
It's
that
like being an energetic detective.
Yes, I'm a little familiar with the feng shui layout in the house
Yeah.
and backyard and how there are different areas. And
Yes.
if you put something in that area, like this is the relationship area in the backyard, it's kind of like a turtle, right? Or an eight. It's kind of the bagua. It's like the bagua.
Yes, the Bagua is divided into 8 segments, and
Okay. And then because the swing set was in that relationship area, I'm
yeah,
gonna guess that I'm just gonna guess. Does this
yeah.
just tell me if this is right? Because we didn't talk about this. That the relationship was strained because the son felt like she was treating him like a toddler?
No, the
No,
relationship with
okay.
the husband was strained, and she devoted all her affection towards her son instead of her husband. And the son was represented by the swing, but that
Oh,
was the
he's
only representation which she could logically put in the garden because she'd had that left over from when he was a toddler. I don't know where it had been in the
um,
garden beforehand. So that was in the relationship area.
very
Um, the
interesting.
garden was big enough that the swing could have been in the children's area, but it wasn't. It was in the relationship area.
Wow.
Another small thing, but you often notice it. Um, and please bear in mind, Najia, I'm very much simplifying things now, just for the purposes of
Oh,
illustration.
I know, I
It-
know.
But if you go into a house or an apartment and you find the relationship area is occupied by the kitchen, which is full
Mhm.
of volatile, hot energy, you'll nearly
Mhm.
always find that the relationship is also very volatile. It may be good, but it's quite explosive. If you have
Wow.
the bedroom in the relationship area, of course, that can be very positive. And these are tendencies. I would say, look at it like this, that if you pick the wrong energy or put it in the wrong place, it's rather like swimming upstream in a fast flowing river. You can do it, but there's a lot of extra effort involved. It's much easier to swim downstream. And this is the essence of feng shui. Look where the energy is flowing, and where it's flowing, if at all possible, if practically possible, align yourself with it, because it will mean much less effort for the same reward. This is what you have to bear in mind.
Yeah, so because you were, how we got talking, I mean, we kind of took a diversion about feng shui, which is really interesting. But it's related to the story of this particular ley lines that
Yes,
are just, on your property, and there's a particular area where it goes into the neighbor's property right through their bed. And
that's right.
well, maybe we'll talk about the angry Celt in the next episode.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about feng shui, can you talk about like having this really negative feng shui because of the ley lines? Tell us about what ley lines are, and then
Okay.
why that ley line has made you've lived in your property, multiple decades, and you've seen
Yes.
people deathly ill. Different people, three different people have moved in over the years and
Yes,
have
they become very
severe
ill.
illness because of literally the placement of their bed on this portal that would normally be okay, a portal, to walk through it, but to sleep on it, be on and
That's
have
right, Najia.
vulnerable will wear at your house. So can you talk about that?
Yes. Energy lines, as the name implies, are sources and channels for the Earth's energy, which can be manifested in various different ways. And that energy can either be productive from our human point of view or dangerous. And just a little aside here, it tends to be that humans, dogs, horses, and sheep all like the same sort of energy. There's good energy, there's bad energy. Cats, by contrast, tend to like the sort of energy which we don't get on with. It's just the way
I
things are.
know, that's so fascinating.
Yes, it's peculiar. In the part of the country where I live, I mentioned this to you before, but just to illustrate the energetic awareness in earlier times, when people were planning to build a house, and bear in mind that you needed a decent acreage to do it, so they tended to be wealthier people. But let's say, for the sake of argument, you had an acre of land on which you were intending to build a house.
Yeah.
Where to build that house on that acre? Now, these days, the property developer will probably think, well, we can build it there because it's cheaper to build it there than it is on the left-hand side, and so on. In earlier times, what they would do was to run a flock of sheep on that acre of land, note where the sheep slept overnight, because the sheep share the same antipathy and love of the same sort of energy lines as we do. Wherever the sheep slept was a safe place to build the house, because that was where the good energy was. Animals instinctively know it. Humans also instinctively know it if they allow their instincts to awaken, or I should say perhaps reawaken, because our instincts have been dormant for so many centuries, especially in the Western world. We don't look at it like this anymore. So where the sheep slept was where they would build the house. And I have yet to find an old house with bad feng shui, in essence. The extensions to old houses, the new summer house or the new, what shall I say, glass house attachment, whatever it might be, they might have bad feng shui, but the original house, almost never. I'm not saying such houses don't exist, but
Yeah.
it's very rare. So our ancestors were very much in tune with it, just as animals are in tune with it. Um, in London during the war, for example, it became something of, what shall I say, common knowledge that if your cats or dogs suddenly were desperate to get out of the house, you better go with them, because it was likely that it was going to get bombed. They sensed
Oh,
it before it happened.
they
Uh,
said that about the tsunami.
yes,
Tsunamis that
exactly.
happened, they said the animals went hours
Exactly.
before,
Yeah, they're tuned
especially
into
the
it.
elephants.
Yes, yes, exactly that, Najia. And uh, we have all this at our disposal if we choose to use it. But most of us don't, because we haven't been educated in that way, which
Yeah,
is a great shame.
it
So
is.
when I became first interested in feng shui, I began to see all these possibilities, and it was like opening new doors in life. And it becomes a way of life which is very, how shall I best put it, comforting and tranquil. It's not to
Mm.
say it's without challenges, but if I look around the house from a feng shui point of view, I'll always do my best for the customer or the client to suggest changes to the house which might enhance the good energies. But those changes should ideally be as simple as possible. I don't want people to have to knock down walls or build extensions to houses. It's much more subtle than that, easier to change back. Try, for example, turning the bed round
Exactly, because that's what
90
you felt.
degrees, something like that, or move it to the other side of the room. Or if the room
Yes.
itself is bad, move the bed out of the room. Do
Yeah.
whatever you easily can first, see how that goes, let it settle in. And bear in mind also, there are certain good days to make movements and certain days which might not be negative, but they're not so positive. So the energies in feng shui are not only judged by their character, but they're judged by the location, and they're judged by the period in which they exist, in which they're enhanced. They're judged by the timing. To take a very simple example, if you're about to cross the road and you've got a 40-ton truck coming towards you, that's potential negative energy. If you step out in front of it, you're going to die. What do? You avoid that negative energy by not
Yeah.
crossing the road. You let the truck go past. It's exactly the same with feng shui. If you can avoid the energy that's negative, by all means do so. If you can't avoid it, then you try and reduce it or overwhelm it or divert it in some way.
Or
This is how it
overwhelm
works.
it.
This is it, you see.
Ah, I wonder how you would overwhelm the energy in feng shui.
You overwhelm it basically either by diminishing the force of the energy itself or by acquiring energy which is positive and sustaining from your point of view, and using that as allied energy with which to overwhelm the source of the negative energy. That's how you do it. Again, look at the an example. Okay, you're walking on your own down the street, and you're about to get mugged. Yeah? There are two muggers there, and you
Mm-hmm.
think, my God, what am I going to do? You've got a few
Yeah.
choices. You can run.
Mm-hmm.
If you're big and strong, you might overwhelm them. But best of all, if it happens, a couple of policemen turn around the corner at that moment and the muggers run off, because you have acquired, just by good fortune,
Yes.
lots of positive energy to overwhelm that negative energy. That's the essence of what I'm talking about. But
You
translate that into
like you
building.
have your angels. Like sometimes if you vibe high,
Yes.
you will attract that protection, and those police officers will manifest at just the right time.
And it manifests you at every level. If you want plants, for example, to
Mhm.
enhance positive energy, it's not a great idea, for example, to have cacti in your bedroom because cacti are full of spikes. It's the
Yeah.
symbolism also that counts. You see, you have broadleaf plants in your bedroom, plants which respire in a
Hmm.
positive manner. Plants, obviously, which are nice to look at. You don't have to have any plants, but if you're going to have them, choose the right ones. And so
Yeah.
it is in every walk of life. Energy that we eat. If you eat rubbish, your energy is diminished and you become ill. Check on what you eat, check on what you drink, check on how you exercise. It's all pretty straightforward, but we don't think of it most of the time. This is the problem. But feng shui extends also to what you have on the table in front of you at dinner time. If you think about it in that way, are you eating positive energy or negative energy?
Exactly. What are you eating? Like, even go
Yes,
more
yes.
toward vegetarian, less harmful.
It might well be.
Because yeah, because you might have I
If
mean,
you
I
have
wouldn't
a
say,
diet of a Big Mac and French fries, and
oh yeah.
your
I would,
your your health is unlikely to be particularly good. I'm not saying that the occasional one will make any difference, of course not, but I'm talking about a tendency here.
yeah.
And so, in this sense, feng shui extends to every waking moment of our lives if we choose to be aware of that. And the more aware of it we are, the easier it becomes to use it to our advantage.
It's more human, it's more organic because we're so into our devices and we have everything sheltering us from nature,
Yes,
because we have electric lights and gas stoves and whatever, and
yes,
we're not even aware of the stars anymore because especially where I live, there's big buildings and things like that in the city, and we're so disconnected, people don't even they're not
that's right.
even aware.
We
Like
are. And
somebody last night in my class was like, "What do you mean like the Big Dipper's moving because the poles are shifting?" I'm like, "Haven't you noticed like when you look at the stars since you're a child that in certain seasons it would be in one spot and it's another because people are just disconnected." And for thousands and thousands of years, people were connected to nature.
that's exactly it. You and I mentioned, or we discussed some time ago when we were talking about Lawrence van der Post and the trip into the Kalahari Desert in what was then Southwest Africa. It's now Namibia and Botswana. And Lawrence van der Post noticed that most of the Bushmen then lived in groups of about 30 people,
Mm.
including the children. And he also noticed that, I mean, the Kalahari is a big place. It's probably the size of Texas, maybe bigger. But the Bushmen always knew where everybody else was. And Van der Post couldn't work this out. And one of the Bushmen who'd spent some time working on a white farm and therefore spoke Afrikaans, which was Lawrence van der Post's mother tongue, he said, well, you have that thing you call a telephone, but we listen to the tapping in the heart. And
Oh,
we can tell you exactly where this other tribe is going to be or the other group's going to be. We're going to be meeting them in 3 days' time at the waterhole, which happens to be 65 miles away. How do you know that? Well, it's obvious. I mean, they've just told us. It was
wow.
just accepted as
It's
normal. You didn't need a
it's that
telephone. Yes,
specific.
but it lies within us all. This is the point. We become, you know, immensely rich as countries. We have big bank balances and we have an impoverishment of our spirit, which is a shame. We can have both, but we tend to neglect one in favor of the other. And it's just a matter of turning our energies around to an appropriate goal. Life becomes a lot better, regardless of one's financial circumstances. I'm not saying that you should ignore them, obviously not. I'm simply pointing out that there are reasonable limits to what one can aspire to in the material world.
Mm.
Ideally, we need good health, we need comfortable surroundings, we need enough to eat, and we need an occupation which we find absorbing and enjoyable. Other than that, we don't need very much when you think about it.
No, it's true. And the relationships are the most important, that's what really it comes down to. And Mark,
Yes.
um, I may wind up this episode, and because
Okay,
I'm trying to keep them in, like, shorter segments for
sure.
the series, and we can talk about. I'd like to talk about the ley lines in the next one, and
Right.
since we just introduced that
Yeah, we touched
concept,
on it.
and
My
maybe
fault, I'm afraid. I
that's okay, and
went
talk
off on
about
a tangent, but
the angry Celt spirit and the pagan
yeah.
things that that have kind of cause issues with the
You're
energy in
right.
the area. We can talk about that in maybe the third episode. We'll see how it goes, how the conversation goes. You're such a wealth of information and so generous with your time. But I think before we wind up this episode, would
Mm-hmm.
a lot of, you just mentioned about, having, we have a lot of financial wealth, but we don't
Yes.
have sometimes the natural attunement, which I believe we will get back. The vibrations are raising. I don't know if you can sense the change in the world is
Yes.
happening, right? Can you feel that?
People are becoming more aware of the alternatives to the present way of life. It's a
Yeah,
slow business because it's a slow business to develop life as we have it today. It's taken really 200 years since the Industrial Revolution, and that completely altered the momentum and the direction of travel of human development. And now we're beginning, I think, collectively speaking, to remember what it was like before in the spiritual sense. And we're finding out that we can have both. But we have to be abstemious. We mustn't be too greedy, either materially or spiritually. Things come, but they need work. They
yeah,
present challenges at times. And this is what we can do. And this is what we can pass on to those who come after us, just as
ex-
we've learned from those who've gone before.
exactly. So yeah, I just thank you for giving this idea that we can be sensitive to the energy, that we have those gifts within us to sense. Now, if you were to do three ways. Oh, I want to just say one more thing, because people who are cat lovers
Yes.
like me, it was so interesting because you were saying that the cats will choose to sleep and feel better in an area that's actually not so great for us,
Well,
humans or
I
dogs.
wouldn't read anything too sinister into this because
Okay.
it may be that the house doesn't have any negative energy at all. There are plenty of houses like that. Cat's got to sleep somewhere.
Yeah,
So if you have a good relationship with your cat, the cat is likely to want to sleep with you.
exactly.
Nothing wrong with that at all. It's when you know that there is negative energy in the house or a certain line of negative energy going through the house, and the cat persistently goes to that, even though there are plenty of other comfortable places for it to sleep. Then you have to start linking the evidence together and the clues together. So
Mm,
in itself, it is not necessarily significant. In the
okay.
presence of negative energy lines, it may be significant. You have to think of it that way. So
There are-
I don't want all cat lovers to take fright and think, oh my God, where's the cat going to sleep tonight? No, it's not like that. It's
Do
just
you,
another clue in the investigation process.
do you know what, Mark? I always felt like there was previous cats that lived here. They were brother and sister. And I felt like the one cat, I swear, uh, she, she was like a Reiki master cat coming into this cat existence, but already a Reiki master. And she would do, she was the strangest, but she would do this thing. She could suck your energy out or put it in with her forehead.
Interesting, interesting.
And she would just place it there and get this really determined look. Like it was in the beginning, the first several years when she would sleep with me, this little tiny undersized cat, because she was a
Yeah,
rescue. When she was 6 years old, she fit in the palm of my hand. She was extremely malnourished and ill. And I adopted her and spent a fortune getting
lucky
blood
her.
transfusions for her and everything. I loved her though, Angelica. And then I guess because she had bad health, maybe she would suck the energy out of me at night and just put her forehead there, and I would feel like, ouch. I would feel like ouch, like I'm when you're getting blood extracted.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would feel that from this cat, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't sleep next to this cat. It's terrible because I always slept with cats. And then later she became more giving, and then
Yes,
she would work on me. So if I was sad or I was low energy or sick, she would come up to me and she would go on whatever part of my body and she would press her forehead. She would do this to my guests too. They're like, "What's with this cat?" She wouldn't ask to be petted. She would just like a job. And sometimes she would do it for 20 minutes and my guests would be like, "What's with this cat? This is hysterical. I'm getting tired of staying here." But she's just determined to stick her forehead there and put her energy like and perform Reiki of some sort, cat Reiki.
yes,
And she was amazing. And her brother, I I noticed, well, the house changed after he came to live here. So there was a lot of negative energy. I had poltergeist activity. We could talk about that whole thing in another
mm,
episode. And I noticed like, everything improved with him quite a bit. And I also worked on the house as well. But then when he passed away, this little tiny cat, right?
yeah,
Put this big projection around the house of protection. Here's a little black cat, fluffy black cat. And she was a fluffy white gray cat. And boy, it left the property and people felt it. They didn't know that my cat died. They're like, what's going on here? Like, it feels different here and I could feel it when I would pull up in the driveway.
yes,
So I
yes.
felt like these cats can be, some cats are very mystical.
That's a wonderful example, actually, Najia. There's so many animals like that. Cats in particular, I suppose, because I guess over the millennia they've acquired an affinity with humans
Yeah.
and they're more tuned into us perhaps than other types of animals might be. But they've been domesticated for a long time and they're very valuable members of our community if we know how to talk with them. And if,
Family.
more important, we know how to listen to them.
I know you're a big cat lover. I know I see the cat pictures on your Facebook.
Yes.
Oh, John, it's been like amazing talking with you. We're going to talk about ley lines
Yes, we shall.
in the next
I'm sorry I
episode.
missed it the first time round, but as I said, I got
Okay.
into a different direction. But
Okay,
we'll talk
it's
about
okay.
Pagan.
Because
It,
feng shui is, it's good to kind of make this all about feng shui and it's related. But I think it's important that everyone be more sensitive to energy and our natural gifts. Do you
yes,
have, let's say, three examples of how to be more sensitive? What would you say if you gave
three
advice?
examples. It sounds perhaps too simplistic, but especially in the countryside, you have to use your eyes. We often don't. We walk along the road without really seeing anything. We see the road, yes, but in my part of the world here, we have lots of narrow lanes and hedges and trees and so on. Once you begin to identify the hedges and trees, it's a bit like acknowledging humans' existence as well. We go through a supermarket, we're focused on what we're eating, what we're going to buy to eat. We don't necessarily notice the people. Once you tune into the people, different personalities begin to resonate with you. So it is with plants and trees and fields and bushes. And if you carry out these walks frequently enough, ideas come into your head via the vegetation you're passing that would not otherwise have occurred to you. I give you one example, which I think we mentioned briefly in a previous talk. Not far from where I live, I go for a morning walk, and at a certain point on the horizon is the tower of the village church. And it's just 5,000 feet from where I'm looking. I know this because I checked it on Google Earth just out of interest.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, that's the
Love
spreadsheet
Google Earth.
nerd in me. But anyway, had I not been in a more spiritual frame of mind as I was then, I probably wouldn't have noticed it. I'd passed it by many times over the years without giving it a second thought. But that particular day, because I was paying particular attention
Uh-huh.
to the trees and the plants, and the idea came into my head, okay, it's 5,000 feet away. Supposing, instead of looking at it as a distance, I looked at it as a time scale. So let's say we'll call it 500 million years because that's arithmetically quite simple.
Yeah.
500 million years ago, the first water inhabitants stumbled up a beach somewhere and began to live on land, as far as we know from archaeological evidence. So that's quite convenient. So if I'm looking across to the village church, it's 500 million years away. So that means that every foot on the ground represents 100,000 years. And with that in mind, it gives you a completely different perspective of your morning walk. Because if I'm standing on my little road, which is about 10 feet wide, I'm looking from where I'm standing to the other side of the road is 1 million years. So by
Yeah.
that time scale, the Roman Empire, for example, has covered about a quarter of an inch. It puts things in perspective. And it's fantastic, Najia, for getting rid of daily frustrations. We all get them, of course.
Yeah.
Frustrations, when you think about it, are laughably unimportant for the most part. You know, your favorite food is out of stock when you get to the supermarket.
Oh
Oh,
yeah, that.
what a shame! Damn. Um, the point is that it puts your frustrations in perspective. Whenever I walk along that part of the road, I look and I think, 1 million years left to right, one side of the road to the other. What am I worried about today? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing compared with that. Why should I be worried? I have, just bear with me a minute. I think I've got it right here. Yeah, I don't know if you can see if I'm holding them up. Let me get them out for you.
Sometimes it takes a while for the lens to focus on whatever you hold up.
Okay, can you see what I'm holding up? It looks like a
Oh
what's
yeah, what is that? A piece
called a
of,
belemnite, and it's the core of a crustacean which was alive in this
oh,
area about 160 million years ago. And where did
oh,
I find it? In my back garden.
so there was water there. It was the ocean.
Yes, at one time, 160 million years ago,
Wow,
where I lived
yeah,
was under the sea. And
exactly.
this belemnite is 160 million years old. If you think of a large prawn, that's basically what it looked like.
Yeah,
This is the
that's old. You're holding the piece of
size of
major
it.
history
Yes,
in your hands,
even by my standards, that's old.
even by.
So I have this belemnite and two of its relations on my desk. And this is another way of doing it. When you're getting frustrated, you look at this and you think, you've been around for the last 160 million years. What's going to be left of me in 160 million years' time? Maybe somebody will holding up, a piece of John in 160 million years' time. Say, do you know where I found this? I found digging it in the garden. I don't know. But the only point I'm making, a serious point, is that once our perspective changes, our reaction to negative events also changes. And the shorter the time span, the more difficult life is for us. If you think about it, Najia, the jails, both in your country and my country, are full of people who have a very short time span. They don't think ahead. They don't think of the long-term consequences of short-term actions.
Yeah.
I need another fix. I haven't
Mhm.
got the money. There's an old lady coming along. I'll snatch her handbag. And they end up in jail for it. They don't
Yeah.
think long term. I'm not apportioning blame here. I'm simply pointing out that without exception, jails are full of people who only think short term. The longer your perspective on life, the more likely you are to succeed in what you're doing. And that needs
I,
practice.
I think you just said something we kind of glossed over it. It was a great way to end the show. That when you change your perspective, or
Yes.
you also change the energy coming at you, right?
Yes, you do. You
Change
do.
the outcome because that energy will shift. That's the
Yes.
whole point.
Does it have to be negative energy? Well, maybe you're looking at some energy which you perceive as negative in your present state of mind, but which in fact is potentially very positive because it will help to shift your perspective. You might ignore it to begin with, rather like as a school child, some teachers you don't like. But once you change your perspective, that teacher may be able to impart very important knowledge to you if you give them a chance. So it depends on the way we react. So negative energy is not always negative. It's
It's
subjectively negative in our state of mind at the moment at which we
at
encounter it.
that small point in history, because like if you have the higher perspective, like if you look at the whole story from the mountain, like some of the things that
Yes.
really upset us as kids, but then you see like, well, that really helped my growth. It's all
Yes.
about perspective, and then you shift your consciousness will then
Yes.
attract more positively to you. You'll have a better flow in life. You'll
You're
have a
absolutely
better
right.
experience.
You see it with small children. They always have a short-term perspective. Of course they do. But
Exactly.
when
That's all they
you're 2 or
know.
3 years old, you couldn't have anything else. And by
Yes.
the time you're adult, your perspective hopefully will have lengthened. But for those in prison and those who don't function properly, they retain the short-term perspective of a toddler. But you can't live like that successfully in the adult world.
Mm.
You have to look at things with a longer term lens or through a longer term lens. It
It
doesn't
makes
guarantee success, but it makes it much more likely.
it
There's the
makes
difference.
yeah, it definitely makes a difference. Well, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, everyone. We're going to talk about ley lines next
Okay, Najia.
and portals, like understanding these energetic uh areas, and
We'll see
we
what we
can
can
tell
do.
you how to find some with
Yes.
dowsing, okay? All
Okay.
right, thank you, Mark. I'm gonna bye everybody. Come and
Thanks,
join us
Najia.
in
Goodbye.
episode 2.
Right here.